Welcome to this episode of the Tiny Syringe Podcast, where we inject you with just one thought, one tiny syringe at a time. Let me introduce you to my friend and thought partner, Roger Brune.
Thank you, Carol, and welcome to old and new friends alike. On today's Tiny Syringe, we feature musician Timmy Arisa. Tim, I loved your thoughts as we have been conversing online throughout this week. And let's just start here. Let me go ahead and just put you in your own words. Give me a moment to pull up your Facebook page. And let me read this, and then let's get some comments back from you. So, from you on Facebook, our collective reality right now seems to be one of chaos. However, this week, amid a global pandemic, necessary protests against racism, my reality was one of unity beyond personal beliefs. Man, that's so good, Tim. This is just a glimpse into the great men I constantly surround myself with. I'm a Black man and proud of it. So proud that I choose to surround myself with others who think differently than me, live differently than me. I love that, bro. And sometimes even look differently than me. I'm a product of my influences, and I'm so proud of that. So grateful for these men and the role they played on the best day of my life. So I'll have you take a moment to tell us what the scene is that represents this photo. But man, I read that the day that you published it. I read it a second time, and I read it a third time. And what struck me, and we'll get into this later, is you're living the life of an American Black man in your mid-20s. And your words transported me back to my mid-20s when I had the good fortune of having some just phenomenal mentors and good guys in my life. So help to unpack what you wanted to communicate in that Facebook post, if you would.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me on here. It really means a lot. I'm so honored that anytime anyone thinks that I'm worthy of sharing their platform. So thank you so much for having me on. First of all, just to kind of give some context into the photo. So I just got married like a couple weeks ago. So the picture that that caption was following was a picture of myself and all the guys at my wedding party. I had 9 guys at my wedding party. And out of my wedding party, I had probably seven white guys, a Hispanic guy, and another African-American male. And honestly, to be completely honest with you, when I was compiling my wedding party together, a big something that I really kind of bothered me was the lack of men that shared my skin tone. And I felt as if on the biggest day of my life, probably the most important day of my life, if I didn't feel like I was represented in my own wedding party, that I would look like a sellout. And even some people who are close to me kind of even expressed that concern for me as well. And not to make this a race thing at all, but that was just a big part. But I kind of got to a point where I'm like, hey, listen, these guys are men that I've surrounded myself with for the past few years. Some of them I've known for 10 plus years. Some of them I've known for 3 or 4 years. But these are the men that I surrounded myself with. And a lot of these guys are the reason that I am the man I am today. And I said, what better way to honor them but then by having them stand with me on the best day of my life. So a decently diverse crew, but just like I said in that post, our reality is so chaotic right now. The fact that I got married in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of race, like that in of itself is crazy. But, I'm also not going to shy away from the fact that, yes, I understand the world that we live in, but I'm not going to shy away from the beauty of that day. It was my wedding day, best day of my life, my beautiful bride by my side, and my best friends with me. And I am a product of my influences. It's because I surround myself with people who don't necessarily look like me or even believe the same thing. There's a couple guys in that group who don't go to church, who don't necessarily even really believe in God, who aren't religious people. And I work at a church, you know what I mean? And yet I saw fit to bring these people to stand alongside me. And I feel like that that is what the gospel is all about, is not by surrounding myself with people who are like-minded and, just to have this resounding, I don't know, I can't remember the word they talk about. It's almost like I don't even know the word for it, but it's like a think tank or something. It's like, you kind of put yourself in this false reality, this bubble, because you're hearing the same things over and over and over. But I feel like I am in a place where I am strong enough in my faith and strong enough in just my ideologies that I invite other perspectives in to help me see things that I may not have seen otherwise.
So tell me, let's focus on that word influences, and specifically male influences for you in this podcast. When did that become enlivened in you? How old were you? And when was that dawning recollection that the people I surround myself, the people that I listen to, that I allow influence into my life, that's really a substantial part. You're a young man at age 23, so like you're getting into this young, and I'm real proud of you for that. So when did that when did that dawn in your heart originally?
I think it's always been a thought on kind of in the back burner of my mind. I'm Nigerian. My parents are Nigerian. I was born here. My parents were born overseas and immigrated to this country. And if you know anything about immigrants, their mentality is way different. They can appreciate what it truly means to be American, but they also bring their heritage and with that. And one of the biggest things, I mean, you hear this all over, but something that my parents said a lot and exemplified a lot in the way that we lived was it takes a village to raise a child. So I was constantly surrounded by aunts, and I called everyone auntie and uncle, even if we weren't related. My parents had a strong community of other Nigerians and people at church, and everyone was allowed to beat me. You know what I mean? Everyone was allowed to tell me I was an idiot. Like it wasn't like, oh, that's your kid, like you can't know. Like everyone changed my diaper and everyone spanked me. Everyone gave me words of affirmation and everyone corrected me. And so I didn't really have a choice. I didn't have a place where I didn't have a safe place to go do stupid things, because everywhere I went, someone was going to tell me, and even if they didn't say anything, they were all conspiring together and it will get back to my dad. So I couldn't get away with anything. So I learned early on, just as a kid, okay, there are a lot of people who feel responsible for my success or lack thereof. And I think that's really what it comes down to is I knew that there were people who felt personally responsible for my growth. And so as I got older, more and more people just kind of took me under their wing. And I feel like influences and mentorship is kind of a two-way street. It's not just me going to someone else, but it's also that person having the humility and the love and respect for me to say, yes, I'm willing to take you under my wing. And a lot of the mentors that I had in my life, I didn't even really realize that they were mentors until after the fact, until the conversations start pouring in. I was blessed to have incredible youth pastors growing up that would just take me out to run errands with them, or would have me come to their house and mow their yard, but then take me out to lunch afterwards. You know what I mean? And it was in those moments where these men and women felt personally responsible for my growth, for whatever reason.
I bet I can locate something in that, and you can confirm it, because I think it's important that we recognize this as well. I actually think that part of your story, the attracting mentors part of your story, is important. And I want to just ask a question, because I suspect this is true. I bet your life was in motion. I bet your life was moving somewhere. And it's in that motion that would attract the attention of the elder to say, I want to get some time with that kid, because time with that kid is going to be multiplied, because as I bring my life that's in motion and Timmy's bringing his life in motion, it's like two tributaries coming together and creating a stronger river. So my guess, and you can confirm or deny, is that your life was strongly in motion, and that was one of the things that was attracting these older men to you and wanting to connect some time with this kid.
Right. I think a lot of the people that in my life, honestly, they had something to gain by my success, in the sense of like, these were pastors that I was a part of their ministry, or, just my parents or something. And that could almost kind of be a cynical way of looking at it if you kind of lean too much on that side. But yeah, I think there's definitely a mutual benefit there. It was definitely a symbiotic relationship. They knew that what they're pouring into me, to some extent, they would kind of reap that in some way, shape, or form. A lot of the mentors that I have were, like I said, were pastors or leaders that I was a part of their ministry in some way, shape, or form. And so they knew that whatever they poured into me, they'd get back in some sort of way.
Timmy, let me read this line from your post, and I want you to vamp on it just a little bit. So in the middle of your post, you say, "So proud that I chose to surround myself with others who think differently than me, live differently than me, and sometimes even look differently than me." Yeah. Unpack that for me.
Man, I think a lot of it is already there. I'm a believer in the Word of God, the Bible, Jesus, everything. I believe in that so much. But I believe that there's truth that transcends denominations. I think there's truth that transcends culture. I think there's just universal truth that you can find almost anywhere. And honestly, the pandemic, just having those few weeks of just nothing, essentially, and having to sit there with my thoughts. And I read a lot of books that I probably would have normally read just because of my busy schedule usually. But having that time, I started to realize, hey man, there's some truth. There's some universal truth in a lot of different viewpoints, things that I probably wouldn't seek out on my own. But they find themselves to me, and you can kind of, you've kind of heard the, eat the meat and throw away the bones. You know what I mean? And so there's little nuggets in almost every I've learned that you can learn something from everyone, even if you're learning what not to do. So I've learned that like I can learn something from a 2-year-old, and I have learned something being around children. I've learned from people older than me, younger than me, people the same age as me. And so I've just learned to be open and not to be so closed-minded when it comes to things that can help take me to the level that I want to be. And I feel like God just works in mysterious ways. We say that all the time.
Yeah. But let's find out if folks can learn something about what you just said.
Yeah.
Infused into what you just described is that portion of you that is carved out explicitly to be humble. Okay. And in the social media age that we are in currently, I don't think that you would describe a lot of society as humble. And, narcissism is having a field day here in 2020 and has been for a while.
Yeah.
So, you are not only a young man, a married man, a musician, and all of the things that we're describing here, but you're also a public figure. And what you're telling me is that you have been able to capture, hold on to, create a filter for Timmy that expresses humility, whether it be you with the 2-year-old or you with one of your mentors. Do you have any tips? How can we in this age, this chaotic age that you describe in your Facebook post, how can we in this social media age actually maintain layers of humility that might actually inform some better decision making for young men?
Man, I still feel like I'm figuring that out every day. I think I'm humble until my wife tells me I'm not. You know what I mean? I think we all think we've got it going on until we take the time to look in the mirror and really analyze ourselves and go, okay, this isn't okay. I'm not okay. And so I think for me, I'd say my humility just comes from like, I hold myself to a very high standard that I feel like I don't always hit. And so honestly, my view of myself, sometimes even in a negative way, is what causes me to seek out mentorship, and because I know that I don't have it all going on. I know I'm not the best musician, so I need to sit down and watch a YouTube video to get better at producing. I know I'm not the best husband, so I need to talk to someone who's done it so I can become a better husband. I know I'm not the best at whatever, and so I want to surround myself with people who I look at and would say, I want that, and talk to them and pick their brains and find out, okay, what did you do? How did you get to where you are today? And so I think it just comes from a healthy view of ourselves. Is like, if we think that, I think, just arrogance and all, it just comes from thinking that you've got it all together. But when you can be honest with yourself and say, hey, I don't like this about myself. I don't like that I treat my wife in this way. I don't like that I treat others in this way. I don't like that I can't play this song on piano the way I want to. I don't like that I can't do this. I need help. And I think that is the foundation, is getting to a place where you realize, okay, I need help. I can't do this on my own. So I need to surround myself with others.
There's something else in your story there that I want to point out. I don't know if you've recognized it or not, but I think it's a great lesson for everybody. You're precise in what you're identifying as your weaknesses.
Yeah.
And there's something about being humble as a human being, humble enough that we will be precise about our weaknesses and be able to aim our missile and to target those specific things that allows you to manifest a better reality. And my experience and fear working with a lot of young people is that the society that we live in offers so many distractions, Timmy, that very few young men ever get to the place where they will humble themselves to be precise about what their weaknesses are. And therefore they can never aim on a precise target and then get to the outcome, which is the change that's required. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I felt like the pandemic has been a blessing in some ways. The 6 weeks or however 8 weeks that we had to stay home. Honestly, I tell people this over and over, and I know the pandemic is a terrible thing, and people have lost their lives, and we honor and we remember those people, and we are very grateful for the people who are on the front lines fighting this thing, and I believe that this too shall pass. We're believing that. At the same time, I tell people Corona was the best thing that ever happened to me. I tell people that all the time, and even though that kind of sounds bad with all the stuff that's going on, but in the sense that it eliminated distractions for me. And for the majority of the pandemic, we weren't married yet. I literally just got married a couple weeks ago. So for all of the time that we were at home, I was living at a house with other guys, and I got to see how it affected us, all of us. One of my roommates had a very tough time with all of this because, like you're talking about, the distractions were stripped away. There wasn't work to distract him. You couldn't go to the clubs. You couldn't go to the bars. You had to stay home. And you can only binge Netflix for so long. You can only do whatever you would normally do. You can only play video games for so long. And I went through that. There were days where I'd watch Netflix for hours. There are days where I'd sit down and play video games for hours. But eventually you exhaust all of the distractions and you're left with yourself. And so I feel like the beginning of humility is just looking in the mirror, like taking the time to quiet the distractions and look at yourself and go, wow, I don't like this about me. What do I do? And so one of the big areas for me was my finances. I'm terrible with my finances. And I knew that going into a marriage where Carly is very disciplined with money, she's incredible, but I didn't want to just rely on her and her expertise with finances to carry our relationship. I wanted to bring something to the table. So, I got books. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I wanted to learn, how does money work? What's the right way to do my finances and not just live paycheck to paycheck? But I had to come to a place where I had to look at my bank account, look at my habits and go, this sucks. I don't like this. How can I fix this? And then it's books, and then it's talking to mentors. I have a lot of mentors who have been successful financially, picking up the phone and going, hey man, what can I do how can I get out of debt? How can I, build wealth? But that starts with looking in the mirror and going, okay, I don't like this. I want to fix it. How can I do it?
Yeah. Let me talk to you about one of my habits, because I think it is a central training point for precisely what we're talking about right now. And I think it would help all the young men who listen to this podcast. When I get up in the morning, I set aside completely quiet solitude. No electronics, no iPhone, no laptop, just silence. Some people of faith, ask me about prayer, and I say, I'm not there to pray. I'm not saying stuff. I'm not communicating. I'm just silent. And the reason for the silence is there are things that are spoken to the human soul in silence that aren't spoken otherwise. And what I really encourage people to do that comes along precisely your commentary about the quarantine is, if you'll find the discomfort of silence and you'll take a number 2 pencil and a pad of paper with you, you will discover the end of yourself. You will be repulsed by the video games, the wasting of time. You will discover, I suck at my finances and I'm married, and at some point I'll have kids of my own. I better get this stuff together.
Yeah.
And if you will do 3 things, all right? Firstly, anticipate that there will be fear there, because you're entering into an unmapped territory that you have never stepped into before. So fear is a part of it. So number 1, anticipate fear, but don't let it repulse you. Don't let it chase you away. Accept that that's just a part of the sauce, a part of the recipe. Number 2, be quiet enough to at least capture one thing. And then 3, and this is so horrible in the human condition, Timmy, it's not falling prey to the shame that's going to want to come right on the other side of that improvement that you're designed to make in your life. And so if you'll focus on the improvement and not get underneath the shame that you need improvement, you'll actually carve a path towards the solution, the ideal solution for you. Because Tim, taking finances for instance, your path to financial independence is going to be different than everybody else's. And so understanding that you're unique in time and space and your answers are singular and unique, but finding those in silence and solitude has always been a winning friend for me. So let's pivot over to music real quickly here. All right.
Yeah.
So you are a musician. Before we finish up today, at the end of our podcast, make sure to remind me to tell our folks where they can find you. But I'm fascinated by this idea of the creative muse. I don't write music and you do. So I don't know if I'm asking you for something difficult or something easy, but could you take us into that singular first Genesis moment where creativity occurs, where your muse begins to speak and you become kind of the instrument, if you will? Unpack that. Help me to know how that happens.
Yeah. I think it happens, for me, it happens in, honestly, I was going to say multiple different ways, but honestly, as I'm kind of reflecting, it really only happens for me in 2 ways mainly. And there are other ways that kind of happen just depending on the environment that I find myself in. But a lot of times just here at home, I mean, this is my home that I'm in right now. I'm actually sitting at my desk where I make music. A lot of times I either get inspired by listening to other people, other music, other great music. I have a lot of influences. I listen to pretty much everything. I love all kinds of music. And there's just, I'm really attracted to artistry. And so there are just lyrics and songs I'll listen to that will just take me there. And it'll inspire me, and it's just like, man, I gotta get something down on paper. And so That's one way. A lot of times is a lot of my songs start just at the piano, and which is funny because I'm not a world-class piano player at all. I'm a decent piano player, but I would say probably 99% of my songs, 95 maybe, start at the piano with just me just sitting down and just playing, and then it just, I don't know. I don't even know really how to explain it, but as I play, melodies come forth and ideas come forth, and it's just putting those on the paper. And I'd say the other 5%, if it doesn't start on piano, I'll be inside my software on my computer, just like listening through samples, and I'll hear a couple different samples or sounds or something that might inspire me, and then I'll go from there. But for writing, a lot of times I'm a music first guy, which I'm kind of starting to shift away from it. But I usually start with music. I start with like a melody of some sort or like a chord progression or something. And then I just kind of I kind of mumble over the song. I'll kind of mumble a melody over the song, and whatever phrases like come out of that moment, I'll kind of attach to that and go, okay, well, this feels like a whatever song. I'm going to go this way. And so that's kind of how my process starts, is usually just from listening and hearing and just playing, and then I'll just kind of get like a spark of inspiration and just run with it. Usually,
I wonder if, Timmy, I wonder if there is a spark of the divine that's available to all of us.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a big fan of the ancients, Greece and Rome,
Yes.
and I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking about the words of Socrates.
Yeah.
And, this guy who may to this day be the most influential philosopher of all humankind. And he described his relationship with his muse.
Wow.
And one of the things that he described is that what is unique about him over the course of his life is that he was always listening and always acted in accordance with that inner tone, that inner voice. And I would love to believe that the spark of divinity is available to all of us. And it sounds like you have been in that space before. So is your sense that those very special moments where the transcendent and the human are just cheek to cheek with each other, that's available to others, not just musicians, but generally all people? Is that your sense?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a book. I don't know if I just typed it in because I want to see who it's by, because I forgot the author's name, but it's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's an incredible book, and honestly, it changed my creative approach. It took the pressure off, and what this book talks about is it's split into 3 parts. It talks about resistance and what resistance is, and resistance is the force that keeps us all from getting to the next level. So not just in music, but just in everything. And the goal of resistance is to kill you. It's not your friend. Resistance is going to kill you. It wants you dead. That's what resistance is. In the second part of the book, it talks about the professional and how the professional is being a professional is the only way to defeat resistance. Okay. So throughout this book, I will be honest, I can be lazy sometimes. So here I am, I'm reading about resistance, and I'm like, wow, this just sounds like a big old monster that I can't defeat. And then it talked about being professional. The professional shows up on time, and they work hard, and blah, 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 blah. So now I'm reading this book, and I'm going, oh, okay, so you're telling me I already know I got to work hard. I've known that my whole life. I was looking for the secret, what's the secret to not working hard, But then the third part is it talks about the muse. It talks about the unknown. And basically what this book does is it takes off the pressure. Is the reason the professional works so hard is it understands that nothing the professional does comes from him. Everything is divine, is what this book says. All inspiration is divine. And what these people are actually doing is they're taking time to listen. They're carving out time to just listen and see a glimpse beyond the veil. And so for me, it took the pressure off to sit down and just work. And I came up with this phrase, like when it comes to music, but I think it's almost universal in the sense, like there's a difference between working on a song and working for a song. I work so hard because I have a vision of what could be, not because I'm trying to create something that I've already seen before, if that makes sense. Or I have a vision of what could be. And so all of my work is to bring from the ethereal into the natural and physical realm. And so that takes the pressure off of just trying to build with the stuff around me, because there's nothing here that can achieve what I've seen. I have to create it myself. And so it talks about the muses, how the muses just trust, the people who put the work in, because they know that when they get this vision, they'll do the work to make it a reality. And so I think that can be applied across everything, from if you're a business owner building an organization, if you're whatever, you're not being, you're being driven by eternity. You're being driven by the divine. All inspiration is divine. And so that, when I read that book, it really took a lot of the pressure off to just try and work and try and build something. But it made me sit down and go, okay, let's peek beyond the veil for a second and get a vision of what could be and work towards that.
When you were speaking, I was thinking about the time that I took our entire family to Broadway, and we went to the Broadway show Amazing Grace. And then there was a different time when my wife and I traveled up to Chicago to see Hamilton. And then thirdly, the thing that went through my mind is just the universal nature of the effect of the movie or the Broadway show Les Mis, and how that sense of redemption is such a powerful word in all three of those stories, and in all of art for the most part. Think about Lion King and all of the great works throughout history. And I was just thinking, like, what seems to be universal, Timmy, is that moment that the entire audience comes to in Les Mis.
Yeah.
And I would love it, and I think you do this, and I think that you have the courage to do this throughout your whole life, and so continue to teach others how to do it. But I would love to believe that people are taking moments like that redemptive moment, where there is a supernatural charge in their soul. And I would love for people, whether it be in the moment or later on that night at home, just close the door, have a little bit of space, and just ask themselves, what was that?
Yeah.
What specifically was that? Beyond the buzz, beyond the entertainment value, what was going through my soul? What was that strum? What was that note and chord that was playing inside of me that was unique in time and space? And the question that I probably won't answer in this lifetime is whether that universal hum, that strum, whether or not that and the thing that you're describing is just a continuation of the original creation.
Wow.
That whole notion of let there be light, and boom.
Yeah.
I did a course several months ago and talked about how NASA, now that we have the Hubble Space Telescope, and I think about 7 from different nations up in the sky right now, they estimate that 4,000 new stars are being born every second, Timmy.
Wow.
And so that sense of that strum, that resonance, that almost some of the things that are portrayed in some of the movies that come out of Hollywood, just that continuation of creativity. And so here you are at your keyboard, and you're teasing out this song. And I just wonder if that is a continuation of original creation. I bet you have an opinion about that.
I would say yes. I would say yes. It's funny. It's funny. We kind of tied everything together. I actually was just at lunch with a mentor of mine right before this conversation, and we were talking about music. He's not a musician, but he loves music, and I was just telling about just my hopes and dreams with my music career, and just I have a desire with music to just create music that just has substance. Like I want people to leave feeling refreshed, feeling alive, and just knowing that there is a God who loves them. And whether I say that explicitly or not, I just want people to have hope and feel revived when they listen to my music. And this guy's brilliant. He's a pastor, and he really, really studies the word. But he told me something that I didn't know. And he said in the beginning, in Genesis, when you look at the phrase, God said, "Let there be light." The original text says God sang, "Let there be light." Mm. He sang it, and when you say that resonate, it's almost as if that one note that he's saying is still just reaching across the universe today, and it's still creating. It's still. I mean, look at physics. I mean, physics says that you can't. Nothing can stop unless there's an action, that comes against it, right? And we're talking about God. I mean, he has no rival, no equal. So that original note from way back when is still resonating in the universe today. That, to me, that is incredible. And the fact that I can even play a small, finite, minuscule part in that with the little tunes that I make here in my apartment, it means the world to me.
Well, here's the wild thing, something that you can believe for is, the Socrates of the world continue to have a voice thousands of years later.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing, and experiencing mastery is a really good path towards having greater influence and having your voice heard. And so just continue to press in. So before we end, I want to end on 2 points. Number one, I've never done this before, but I want to run Timmy Arisa through a lightning round because you're a musician. So I want to know some stuff about you as a musician. And then once we get done with that, they'll just take a minute. I want you to tell folks how they can reach out to you. So here's our lightning round, right? So favorite song of all time?
Oh, that's so tough. That's like picking your favorite kid. Oh, man. I really don't know. You know what's funny? Last night I was listening to some songs I hadn't listened to in a long time. I just realized for the first time how beautiful the song Chasing Cars by Snow Patrol is. That is probably one of the best written love songs of all time. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I love so many songs. I don't know if I can even really answer that question.
Question number 2 might be just as hard then. So favorite artist of all time?
Michael Jackson, hands down.
Right.
Hands down. He's just for mainstream to have the appeal that he had and to be as artistic as he was. I think it's unparalleled. No one will ever come close to who he was.
Yeah, and by the way, we might as well circle back to that word you used earlier, which is transcendent. I mean, there are just some things that he did, some things that he achieved on stage and through his disciplines that just transcended time and space. Right. I think we can say that about him.
You can't have a conversation about American pop music and not talk about Michael Jackson like that. He's just, you have to talk about him. And so he's definitely my favorite, hands down.
All right. Favorite song on your playlist now?
Oh, right now? A song I've been listening to a lot right now. Man, I've got to look through my playlist here. Wow, man, these are really hard questions, man. Honestly,
you're the musician.
I know. It's tough. There's a ton. There's a song by this is one of them. I'll give you one of them. There's a song by Rufus Du Sol. They're an Australian electronic trio. It's called Underwater. That song has just been stuck in my head. It's a great song, well produced, well written. So love that song.
Next one, jazz or R&B?
They're the same thing, really, honestly. No, not really. Probably R&B. Just because that's what I listen to more, but I love and appreciate jazz. I just can't play it very well. So,
favorite guitar that you have ever played?
Oh, the Fender Stratocaster is the best guitar ever created. Just with its versatility, you can hear it as soon as you hear it, that's what it is. So I think it's a great guitar, very versatile. You can do anything with it.
Have you ever played a house show?
I have not. I was planning one right before all this crazy stuff happened. So I want to do one so bad. I need to do.
Invite me and I'll come in for it. So.
Yes.
Favorite venue for an artist to connect with the crowd?
Your local coffee shop.
Really? Love that.
Yes.
Love that.
Yes.
And then lastly, biggest stage that Timmy Arisa has ever played on?
Oh, definitely church. I don't think I've been in a crowd bigger than the one I'm currently on. And I'm very, very grateful to be a part of the ministry that I'm a part of today. So
fantastic. There's something interesting about big stages that I've had the good grace to notice over the course of my life. And again, I think this gets back to that issue of what is transcendent and that spark of the divine. Yeah. You have certain artists that if you'll really examine what's going on in the room and they're on a big stage, you have certain artists that can fill that stage.
Yes.
And
yes.
I would love to know what that ingredient is inside of that musician, inside the human soul, that allows a human being to fill up more space than they're contained in.
I think it's just charisma. I think stage presence, what people would call star power, the X factor, the it factor. Not everyone has it, but the people who do just know how to capture audiences. Michael was one of those people. Justin Timberlake is someone that I feel like does that very well. Honestly, to be honest, I don't think there are a ton of artists today who truly capture that. I think it's very rare to see someone who truly knows how to own a stage, especially a bigger one. I think Bruno Mars does that exceptionally well. He's electric, and there's only a few artists that I can look at and go, yeah, you know how to own that stage without being gimmicky or, I think some people use gimmicks to try and fill it up, but there are very few people who can fill it with their personality, and those people are rare.
Yeah, I think in some way we get back to that whole issue of divinity, like that spark. Yeah. And I'm just, maybe what I'm saying to folks is this: practice curiosity throughout your whole life. Just stay in that space. Don't let your thoughts run away, but pull yourself into the space that you're in. And if you'll stay curious and you'll poke around just below the surface, at the very least, you'll come away with some interesting questions.
Oh, absolutely.
And those who come away with interesting questions, they win the day. So, Timmy, how can we stay in contact with you? How can we access your music? The promo stage is all yours. Take it away, my friend.
Hey, well, yes, like you said, I'm Timmy Arisa. Right now, I am working really, really hard. So I have a single out that I released in February called Tell Me on Spotify, Apple Music. It is called, like I said, it's called Tell Me. Just Timmy Arisa, Timmy, then Arisa on Spotify, Apple Music, Instagram, Facebook. I'm there. I will say I've been working very hard on some new content, and it is nothing like what's out there. That was actually my debut single. It's doing pretty well. Praise God for that. And then I'm working hard on some new music that I believe will just really, really resonate with. It resonates with me, and that's really all that matters. But I hope it resonates with all of you. So honestly, thank you so much for letting me share your platform, and I just love talking about these things, and I'm always looking to grow. I'm looking forward to talking to you some more as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us. I'm going to end with just a couple of takeaways. So, number one, hey, young men, take an accounting and an inventory for the men that surround you and be selective about those who influence you. Number two, get your life in a position where you're creating momentum, because momentum will be the singular thing that causes an attraction between more accomplished older people and you. And so follow Timmy's path in that regard. And number three, man, for the rest of your life, make this commitment. Stay curious. If you have to put that on your phone to go off at 6:15 a.m. every single morning, the first message that your eyes see in the morning when you get up, stay curious, do that, because there's things just beyond the surface that you'll discover. And you live in a society today that will keep you amused so that you never have to muse. The world needs more young men who are ready, willing, and able to muse. That takes time, that takes attentiveness, and it's just a better way to live. So that is our Tiny Syringe for today. I welcome your feedback, and here is how you can reach us.
Hit subscribe to become a thought partner with us. Got a thought you want to explore? Go to the show description page where you will find our email and social media. The Tiny Syringe Podcast is free and relies entirely upon listener support. So look for the heart-shaped donor link while you are there. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Bigger than my imagination.